James, big jobs report yesterday, robust stock market, declining interest rates, tamed inflation. If it's the economy, stupid, why isn't Harris ahead?
Well, first of all, you forgot the dropping crime rate, which is really impressive. She's slightly ahead, and it's not the election. These things tend to break one way or the other at the end. So if there's 7 swing states, the least likely result is they break 4-3. But I can't stop the commentariat from saying it's going to be neck and neck and it's going to come down to this. I think it'll break at the end. I think someone will carry swing states 5-2 or 6-1. And whoever does that will do well in the House and do well in the Senate. But this thing is a long way from decided.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, it is looking really, really, really bad for Kamala Harris right now. And no, that's not an exaggeration, okay? The Kamala campaign is in full-blown panic mode because it appears as if Kamala Harris is basically losing, okay? If history was to repeat itself, in which Trump typically overperforms when it comes time to vote, then it looks like Kamala Harris is on a one-way trip to a landslide defeat against Trump, okay? And even CNN is admitting this out loud as they have given Trump nearly a 70% chance of winning the election, okay? Although Kamala Harris has a slightly better chance of winning the popular vote, it seems like when it comes down to the Electoral College and the win probability there, Trump is gaining a whole lot of steam. And one of the reasons why is because Kamala Harris is struggling in swing states like, for example, Michigan. We talked about this yesterday, among voters who are traditionally very pro-Democrat. But this time around, that's not the case. Trump is doing a whole lot better with those voters. Take a look.
Wisconsin, Arizona. I'm hearing Democrats expressing a lot of concern right now about Michigan. Where do Harris and Trump stand in Michigan right now?
Yeah, I think there's good reason for Democrats to be concerned with what's going on in the Wolverine state. And we can see it right here in the polling average. Look, if you look at the Democrat versus Trump margin in, of course, the great state of Michigan, what do we see in the polling average? We see Kamala Harris only up by a point, right? Compare that to the 2020 result when Joe Biden won, of course, in Michigan by 3. Joe Biden at this point in the polls in 2020 was up by 6. No matter what way you splice it, 1 point is significantly less than 6 points. It's a race at this particular point, Mr. Tapper, that is far too close to call. And of course, Michigan is so pivotal, both for Kamala Harris and for Donald Trump, but even more so for Kamala Harris, because this is the chance they win the election if they lose in the great state of Michigan. The chance that Harris wins the election if she loses in Michigan is just 7%. For Trump, it's 16%, slightly higher. But I think the key nugget that you can take away from this data is Michigan is a must-win, but it's especially a must-win for Kamala Harris.
There's also a lot of talk. There are a lot of union members in Michigan, and we know union leadership's endorsement of a presidential candidate only goes so far. It really comes down to the rank and file members who might be in favor of Trump because they're worried about electric vehicles. There might be cultural issues, et cetera, et cetera. Where does the union vote stand in Michigan?
Yeah, so let's take a look. We'll look at this year, and then we'll compare it to where we were back in 2020. So this is union households in Michigan, presidential election margins. Look at this. Joe Biden won that vote by 15 points back in 2020. Look at where the margin is now. Harris is ahead in union households, but that number, that lead for her, is down to just 6 points, down to 6 points. And this mirrors something that we've seen nationally, and that is, at least among union households, Kamala Harris is right now showing the poorest showing for any Democrat. You'd have to go all the way back since 1984 in the Reagan landslide when Mondale won union households by even less than right now what Harris is ahead by. But the bottom line is, yes, Harris is ahead among union households in Michigan, but that margin is considerably slimmer than what Joe Biden won amongst them back in 2020.
And in this perfect storm in Michigan for Harris, Democrats are also worried about losing strength with Arab American and Muslim American voters in places such as Dearborn, because of what's going on in the Middle East right now. What does history tell us?
Yeah, what does history tell us about Dearborn? It can basically change at a moment's notice. You know, Joe Biden won in Dearborn by 39 points last time around, but history is not always prologue, because I want you to take a look back at the beginning of this century. Remember, George W. Bush won in Dearborn by 8 points. Then 4 years later, after the war on terror started, a lot of Muslims turned against the Bush administration. John Kerry won in Dearborn by 19 points. And remember, uncommitted in the Democratic primary this past time around won a majority of the vote in Dearborn. So the bottom line is Dearborn and the Arab Muslim vote very much up for grabs in Michigan. Not a good sign for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad. And you know it's bad because reportedly Democrats are concerned over Harris's light campaign schedule, risk-averse strategy, steal the Biden campaign infrastructure. So now they're basically coming up with excuses for why Kamala Harris's campaign strategy of ducking and hiding, right? The Biden strategy of hiding in the basement, why that is failing, which is something that I said like a month ago. I was like, nah, Kamala just can't keep hiding, right? Here's the thing. Joe Biden has a built-in excuse for it. He's old, right? So it's, kind of like plausible deniability. It's like, okay, well, he's old. He doesn't have the energy. He can't be out there like that, right? Kamala Harris is not the case, right? Democrats before Kamala Harris have been very active on the campaign trail. They've shown that energy that you typically look for in candidates that are as young as somebody like Kamala Harris, right? Think about the Obama energy of 2008. The dude was everywhere. Kamala is not. Kamala is clearly hiding because she can't defend her disastrous record as a senator, as a prosecutor, and as vice president. She can't do it, right? So what she's doing is that she's essentially doing nothing but friendly interviews and answering really no tough questions whatsoever. So people still have questions about her. And I think what's happening is that the more that she is doing this, she's building more distrust among the American people, right? The electorate are saying that, okay, this woman doesn't really seem like somebody I can trust. She was involved in the Biden administration. The Biden administration, their policies have been terrible. We need change. Now she's out here campaigning with Liz Cheney, right? When, again, people want change, right? They don't want the establishment, okay? And when you campaign with Liz Cheney, basically what you're telling people is that, hey, yeah, I am the establishment, right? I'm same old, same old. Again, just overall, not a good strategy for Kamala Harris. And there's not really that much she can do to change it, because if she were to do more interviews that are actually tough, clearly she does not have what it takes to actually do well in these interviews, evidenced by the fact that she can't even improvise off the cuff when her teleprompter malfunctions, right? Which is what we saw just a day ago, where Kamala Harris seemed to malfunction when her teleprompter had a glitch and she was stuck on repeat because she didn't know what to say because she's so scripted. Take a look.
Remember his number, 32. Today we got 32 days until the election. So 32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end. We are the underdog. And we know we have some hard work ahead.
Yeah, so this was in Michigan, a state that she needs to win desperately. And she's essentially malfunctioning when her teleprompter isn't working, right? She does not have the ability to improvise on her feet. And part of the reason why is because, again, she never does interviews where she can actually practice doing that. And as a result, again, you have Democrats that are very, very, very concerned about her current strategy. But in my opinion, I don't think there's anything that she can do to turn it around, because she just doesn't have the ability to actually do interviews in the same way that you've seen people like Gavin Newsom do interviews on Fox News, other Democrats, Pete Buttigieg, whatever, right? They will do these things. Kamala Harris just doesn't have the ability to do so. So let's read here. Democratic operatives are becoming worried about Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign with just weeks left in the presidential race, according to a new report. Politico published a report on Saturday based on interviews with more than 24 Democratic operatives, some remaining anonymous, who candidly criticized Harris's campaign as too light on unscripted interactions and too risk-averse with how close she is in the polls to former President Donald Trump. they also knocked her for a relatively light campaign schedule as of late. According to a Political review of Harris's travel, she spent more than a third of her days since the Democratic National Convention, quote, receiving briefings from staff and conducting internal meetings or without any scheduled public events. The vice president spent more than half the remaining days, quote, holding rallies, policy-focused speeches, events with labor unions, and other in-person public-facing events, including stops at small businesses in swing states, which the outlet noted is relatively light compared to former President Barack Obama, who rarely had a day not focused on campaigning at the same time in his races. Quote, we're in the game and we're competitive because Joe Biden stepped down and Kamala Harris filled the void and she met the moment, one Democratic operative told Politico. This is still the Biden campaign infrastructure that was anemic. The operative claimed, quote, it takes forever for decisions to be made by the campaign. Another operative identified as a former staffer for President Joe Biden said Harris is doing better than past candidates like Hillary Clinton, but she needs to up her appearances. Yeah, so with that being said, again, the problem here with Kamala is that the interviews that she is doing, she is basically doing them in very friendly territory. Like, for example, this woman is going on a sex podcast, right, called Call Her Daddy, okay? And she's doing that interview, and we know that's going to be super friendly, right? That's just going to be a whole bunch of talk about abortion, no pushback whatsoever, okay? It'll be a victimhood fest for women, right? But we know that behind closed doors, they are in fact panicking because they're making panic moves like this, right? Instead of making Kamala Harris actually sit down for a tough interview, they're now making Tim Walz sit down for a tough interview because he got destroyed by J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate. And that's probably going to end up showing up in the polls over the next week or so. And Democrats are concerned about that because, again, we all know what the reaction was after that debate. It was not good for Tim Walz.
Primetime's been saying for weeks the Democrats were babying Kamala and Timmy at their own peril. Their game of hide and seek with the media was eventually going to come back to bite them. And last night it did.
I've been bewildered a little bit by the absence of both the presidential candidate and the vice presidential candidate on television since they became the nominees, because that's how people get to know you. It may be a little bit of a problem for Walz, having not done this. You know, sitting with you guys is good prep for debates. It's good batting practice for these events. Walz has not been doing it.
Vance's edge over Walz was undeniable, and MSNBC had a hard time processing it.
It's the audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. Mm-hmm. The audacity is that someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right?
Now, the media who slimed Vance out of the gate as a sketchball set such low expectations that when Democrats laid eyes on him, unvarnished, they liked him.
So I was getting texts from Democrats, panicked, quite frankly, who were saying, wow, he's really moderating himself on a lot of these issues. He's the most likable he has ever been.
JD charmed the socks off the country, and now the media looks even more dishonest, if that was possible. Vance's talent as a debater is too big to rig, and he's gotten himself into fighting shape, sparring with the press for months, fighting off cheap shots, working out his policy chops. And just like the Biden debate, the media can't spin it.
J.D. Vance came to this debate to land a bunch of punches, and he did.
The two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy, Harris has a big deficit on immigration, and Republicans were happy tonight and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
Vance clearly, I think it needs to be said, clearly the more experienced debater, the slicker speaker.
He was spending a lot of time in the first half or 2/3 proving he read the briefing materials, and I was missing the magic and the organic spontaneity of Tim Walz.
I wonder why Walz didn't have the magic.
I think that Walz did seem unsteady. And frankly, what I saw in Walz is somebody who has not faced questions on a national stage since he became the Democratic nominee. He was simply out of practice. I mean, I don't know why they've done it, but they've kept him out of the limelight. They've kept him away from reporters. They haven't had him do any interviews, and he was clearly unsteady through much of that debate.
Yeah, well, again, the reason why is because he wasn't doing any interviews, right? Because he wasn't sparring, okay? He wasn't battle tested, okay? And that was a big problem for Tim Walz. Now they're trying to make up for it, okay? Because again, they're now making him do a sit-down interview, solo interview tomorrow on Fox News, right? Which, this is 100% confirmation that they're panicking behind closed doors because they have been trying to avoid this like the plague, right? The last thing that the Kamala campaign wants is to do any sit-down interviews with Fox News. And the fact that they're sending Tim Walz to sit down with Fox News not only tells you everything you need to know about how that debate went for Tim Walz, right, and what they think, but also how her campaign is doing, right? She is flailing right now, right? Her campaign is absolutely tanking. There's no doubt in my mind, because if they believe they were in good position, if they believe they were on track to win, they wouldn't be doing this. This is desperation, absolute desperation. Democratic vice presidential nominee Tim Walz will sit down with Fox News anchor Shannon Bream for a Sunday morning interview, his first since he joined Vice President Kamala Harris's 2024 ticket. Walz has been dogged by critics over a narrative he has been dodging the national media since the Democratic National Convention, while Walz sat down alongside Harris in August for a joint interview with CNN's Dana Bash. The Minnesota governor has kept a low profile since, mostly opting to speak at local campaign events. There was a consensus among the pundits that the Democrat either lost or was unprepared for Tuesday's debate against Senator J.D. Vance. After the debate, Dana Bash said on CNN, quote, "I think the lack of interviews that he has done with the national media, with local media, it showed he needed more reps." Saturday afternoon, Fox News announced Walz had agreed to sit down with Bream on the Fox News Sunday X account. The Harris campaign had not commented on the interview, which will air at 2 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday as of the time of publication. Throughout the last week, Walz had faced plenty of heat for being generally unavailable to reporters with just weeks until the November election. Some critics claim he was not ready for prime time because he had not faced enough tough questions. Yeah, so again, this is kind of a surprise to me because I told you guys before Kamala picked her VP, I said, listen, we all know that Kamala's running from the media because we've seen how she performs in interviews in the past. She's just not good, right? So I thought that Kamala would be smart enough to at least pick somebody that would be able to make up for her obvious weakness. But this woman is so dumb, right? She's so stupid that she picked somebody that's literally just like her, right? The male version of herself, right? That's who she picked, okay? Except he's white, right? But that is what she did, okay? Instead of picking a bulldog, right, somebody that can balance her out. See, here's the thing. When Trump picked J.D. Vance, Trump picked somebody that can balance him out, okay? That's a little bit more buttoned up, right? That's a little bit more polished, okay? That, hey, is going to make up for his weaknesses. And that's what J.D. Vance showed the world on the debate stage against Tim Walz. Tim Walz, on the other hand, he showed the world that basically he's just like Kamala, right? And that, to me, is just another sign that Kamala Harris is just in over her skis, okay? She makes bad decisions, and this is just another bad decision that she made with picking Tim Walz. So now they're trying to make up for it at the last minute because they've essentially been playing not to lose, okay? And when you play not to lose, especially in a close game, right, that's how you end up losing, right? Anybody that follows football, basketball, whatever sport, right? If you're in a close game with somebody going into the fourth quarter and you're up by 3, right, which in this case, I'm not even sure if I can say that Kamala's up by 3. If anything, I think she's behind by at least 3, okay? And she's playing to lose and you're behind, right? So now all of a sudden, they are switching the strategy, okay? And now they're saying, okay, well, we have to go out and send Tim Walz to Fox News. Well, again, why are they doing this? It's because they're behind, right? If they was in front, if they comfortably had a lead, or if they thought they comfortably had a lead, they wouldn't be doing this, right? When the mainstream media was fawning over them for a month straight, and the polls were in her favor, okay? Yeah, they weren't pressed to do anything at all. They were telling the media, nah, screw you. We don't have to talk to you guys. We don't have to answer any questions. Now, all of a sudden, they're running to the media and doing Fox News interviews. Again, why is that? It's because they're losing. So again, full-blown panic behind closed doors. Tim Walz running to Fox News because he's cooked. In states like Michigan, right, and Wisconsin, Tim Walz, being the governor of Minnesota, of a Midwestern state, he was supposed to help out Kamala Harris in those states. The fact that Kamala is struggling more so in those states than her predecessors, even with a guy like Tim Walz on the ticket, it just tells you that he didn't do what he was supposed to do, right? He doesn't have the appeal that she thought that he had, and this is just one of many bad decisions that Kamala Harris has made as VP, okay? And, you know, hey, I think that this should be a clear sign to the American people that Kamala Harris is just not cut out for the job, okay? Because if she would have picked Josh Shapiro, I'm not saying that she would necessarily be winning, but she would have this problem, right? She would have the problem of not being able to do these national media interviews because she doesn't have a bulldog on her team. So now it's hard for her to turn it around because she's not capable of doing these interviews. Tim Walz is not capable of doing the interviews. Now they're forced to do the interviews, which could make the problem worse for them because Tim Walz likely will probably fall flat in the interviews in the same way that Kamala Harris has failed flat in a vast majority of the interviews that she's done up until this point, although those interviews have been softballs, right? She hasn't hit one home run in any of her interviews whatsoever, okay? And that's really, really, really bad considering how she hasn't done any interviews on an outlet that will ask her tough questions, right? So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.